Across the board.
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 You're listening to Across the Board. Buckle up, because things are about to get interesting.
Let's get situated. So you were in Canada over the weekend. How was that?
Cold. It was freezing. Toronto, actually.
Yeah.
I was there for 5 days for a conference, and let me tell you, living in LA, we're definitely not used to that kind of weather, so I was not prepared. Even though I had a big coat that I took with me and scarves and boots, it was just absolutely not enough.
Was it like 14 degrees or something
It
like
was,
that?
yes, it was something like that, and it was snowing, and obviously someone from Los Angeles, we don't really ever see snow.
No, not usually.
But, I saw it snowing, so I went outside. I'm like, oh, this is so pretty. And I think I was out there for maybe a minute. I'm like, this is not for me. I had to go back and say, I'm like, no, my face is frozen.
I mean, yeah, obviously it gets cold up there. But outside of that, though, how is Toronto? Is it like just...
It's
Is it...
kind of similar to here, I would say.
So it's very LA...
I wouldn't say
Yes.
it's very LA, but it's similar. Their downtown, I thought, was a lot cleaner.
Uh-huh.
I didn't see that many homeless people
Interesting.
or unhoused people.
I thought
I saw maybe 4.
so. That's kind of
And-
interesting because I thought Canada was very much like a liberal friggin' stronghold where everything goes and
They are, but I think certain parts of Canada that I've been to, I know create sections for the unhoused and kind of keep them there.
interesting.
From what I've heard from local folks in those provinces and specific provinces of Canada. So I think it's kind of isolated to those certain areas, and you don't see much of that outside of that.
Well, I mean, but that's kind of what LA was back in the day with Skid Row. It's like they gave them Skid Row and said, okay, you stay here. But obviously that wasn't the case. They spilled over into every neighborhood.
Now it's kind of free for all.
Oh, absolutely.
But one other thing I noticed there is, you go to restaurants here and you for example, you get Chipotle and you take it to go, or you're at a restaurant and you take something to go and you're like, oh, let me get some to go utensils. Everything there is wood.
Interesting.
Nothing.
Well, they got a lot of it. I mean, they're most of the country is just forest and ice.
I know,
so-
but like it's I got Chipotle at one point and I had to eat it with a wooden fork, and it was just like you could taste the wood, and it was just
Interesting.
not very pleasant at all. And it was like a small fork, and I'm like, what is this supposed to do for me?
Okay, but at the same time, too, though, plastic's not the greatest thing.
It's
for
not.
you
Of course
either.
it's not.
So maybe they have maybe it's an idea, but
Absolutely, but I
is
don't.
it just like shitty wood though? Like
Yeah.
rough finish, like you get splinters.
Yes, yes.
That's
And it's
fucking
like, but it's
nuts.
like I don't want to taste wood in my food.
Yeah, at least it
You know
feels
what I
like
mean?
somewhat finished and sealed.
Yeah,
So that
it's like rough wood, like those like cheap chopsticks
yeah.
that like
Yeah.
kind of tear. It was like that.
Oh yeah. God.
And one more thing I noticed there is public restrooms don't have any seat covers.
Huh.
So if you don't know how to squat, you're literally shit out of luck.
Huh.
I don't know how people take a dump. I think you just have to lay out toilet paper or something, but there's like, you don't get toilet seat covers. It's just toilet paper.
Well, and that's kind of that's the interesting thing is like being in the United States, we're used to certain things. Like, so apparently down in Mexico, like public restrooms, you have to pay. Well, you don't have to pay to go into the restroom, but you have to pay for toilet paper. So it's like
Interesting.
you can go and take a shit, but there's no toilet paper unless you've prepaid and bought your toilet paper outside the restroom.
But let me ask you this: how do you know how much toilet paper you need? Because sometimes, like, and I know everyone has been through this, so don't even lie. You just keep wiping.
Of course you
and
do.
Wiping, and that bitch does not go away.
Well,
so what do
I
you do?
mean-
You just go back out. You put your pants on. Like, hey, I need more toilet paper.
fucking
Let me
don't
buy
know.
some more.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly, I don't disagree with this whole selling toilet paper because, yeah, you're right. First of all, how do you know how much you need? Second of all, like, what if somebody just really needs to take a shit and they don't have spare change? Like, what
Yeah.
do you like? What are you wiping
Can you
with?
take toilet paper in there, or do you have to buy it? Like, these are the questions
I don't fucking know.
that would plague me. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, that's it might be a crime to sneak toilet paper into a public restroom.
I mean,
It wouldn't surprise me.
I think I would go for it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if it was either shit my pants or shit and not wipe, I'm doing the shit and not wipe because a little bit of poop in the pants is a lot better than a whole fucking load.
Oh, so bad.
I'm just being honest. I mean,
It's so bad.
Obviously, neither one is pleasant, but I'm not shitting my pants.
Yeah.
I'm not having a full, like an entire shit in my pants. Like that is not.
Yeah.
No, it's not kosher.
So, at one point, I was at a conference. I met a lot of people, different types of people. And, I went outside at one point. I was like taking a little break. I was walking around and I came back and, some people that I was talking to were like, oh, it's kind of warm outside. It's actually nice. The sun's out. And it was like 22 degrees. And I'm like, this is warm for you?
Well, they're probably used to,
Yeah.
Single digits like regularly in the winter.
There were so many people that I saw walking down the street in just like a regular jacket and a t-shirt.
No
And
fucking way.
yeah.
That's
And
insane.
I'm over here. I look like a snowman bundled up with my coat and the 2 scarves. And if I had like a mask or like earmuffs, I would have totally worn them because it was almost unbearable how cold it was.
Like you look at even the past couple of days here in LA where it's gotten down to like
It was like 47 degrees last night. And
high
it was just
40s,
not,
and it was
yeah.
freezing. I mean, it's just like I can't imagine single digits. But then again, I guess you probably at a certain point you probably get used to it too.
I'm sure.
Like if you live there for like 6 months, you're probably just like, oh, okay, it's normal now.
I've been to New York in the winter, and I remember wearing a coat and a jacket underneath and boots and earmuffs and gloves, and it was like in the 30s and 40s at that time, but it's a different cold there than it is in California.
Yeah.
So for me, that was very, very cold.
East Coast cold is different. It's weird.
Going to Toronto where it's colder was just, I thought I couldn't get colder than that, but I did. And the weird thing is I've been to Lake Tahoe several times in the winter when it was snowing and it was like 20 degrees. It does not feel as cold for some reason.
Well, remember a couple of years ago when we were in Big Bear and I was standing outside in a t-shirt when it was like 26 degrees and I was like,
it's cold, but it's like,
it was very like
it's
not
bearable.
tolerable, but it's bearable.
Yeah. Like
I
you can't
wasn't
be out there for like
comfortable.
30 minutes, but like if you want to just step out for like a breath of fresh air for like a couple minutes, yeah, totally fine.
Yeah, I was not like I wasn't comfortable, but then again, I also wasn't freezing and running to go back inside. So
yeah, I didn't, realize how cold it. I mean, I knew it was going to be cold, but I didn't realize you would actually feel how cold it was. That one of the days I ended up going to this restaurant and it was like 1.5 miles from the hotel that I was staying in. I'm like, oh, I'll just walk back. And by the time I got to the hotel, my face was so numb. I can't feel my face when I'm with you. Literally, it was just.
That's not what that song is.
I know.
That's
but that's literally what I thought of, but different meaning. But it was, yeah.
Yeah, I think at that point, my nose would be running, my boogers would be frozen.
All of the above.
The first thing is your nose is the first thing that you can't feel.
All of the above. And the amount of times I went into an Uber and they're like, are you cold? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, aren't you cold? They're like, I don't leave the house. I just Uber and I go home. And I'm like, okay. They're like,
So
they don't
step outside.
No.
They're just from
They
the
just
house
Uber,
to the car to the
yeah. And they just go home and.
Well, I guess that's one benefit of Uber is you never really have to deal with the weather. You have to drive in it, but you're always in climate control. So it's like having an office job kind of in that sense. Yeah, it's fucked up though. It's on the other side of the world. Well, not the other side of the world, but on the other side of the continent here in LA last week, crazy fires. Which is strange also in the sense that it wasn't necessarily hot though. Like the weather was dry, but it wasn't hot.
It was
like
windy.
it was still cold. Absolutely. It was crazy windy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've ever had winds like that in LA that lasted that long. But I'm just saying like it was cold wind. It wasn't the normal warm wind that you're used to that starts the fires and stuff. But like, I mean, by nighttime, it was again in the 50s. It was like, oh shit, it's freezing outside.
To us, that's freezing for sure.
Well, yeah, for us, but But like it was just strange. It was strange timing, I think, because like usually you're used to this more in the summer months when it's it's 105 outside and it's like
Yeah.
hot wind. It's like drying everything out. But I guess it was the perfect recipe. I don't
Yep.
know.
I think they said this is the biggest fire LA has ever seen.
They are actually preemptively estimating. They're not sure yet. I think it was Newsom that said this, and I'm not 100% sure, so I could be wrong. But he said that this is more than likely like I think it's the biggest fire in the history of the country in terms of like property
Wow.
damage and cost and all that.
I mean, Pacific Palisades, like all the houses are.
Well, Pacific Palisades and Altadena, Pasadena
yeah.
area. I mean, I think they lost more houses than the Palisades, but the Palisades numbers wise,
Devastating.
yeah, entire fucking neighborhoods were wiped out.
Insane.
Like I say this to everybody when it comes up, but I'm like, when I first saw the aerial shot of the Palisades, like the area around the village, and it was nothing but burned down houses, I dismissed it as, okay, somebody's shit posting because this is clearly not what it really looks like. I imagined, a couple of houses here and there, but the first photo I saw literally looked like something out of a post-apocalyptic video game where the entire world had gone to shit and there was like atomic war. I didn't believe that was real until I saw the actual video from the helicopters.
It looks like a scene from a movie.
It
Doesn't
really
seem
does.
real at all.
Like there's, a garage standing here, a house there, but the rest of it has literally just been wiped off the map. I mean, I'd imagine that at some point somebody's going to come along and create some kind of method, system, something to prevent stuff like this from happening, because
I would hope so. I mean, granted, yes, this was the largest that we've ever had, but we've had fires before.
yeah, and they're regular.
And
it's not even
I don't know what they're doing to prevent them from happening, but they need to do a better job.
well, and here's the thing is like the thing that boggles my mind is technology has moved forward in so many aspects of life.
Right.
Like everything, fucking whether it's computers, cars, I mean, everything has gotten more technologically advanced. But when it comes to fighting fires, we still are doing the same thing we did over 100 years ago, and it's just pouring water on it. We might not be doing it with buckets. Now we have pumps and trucks and hoses, but we're still just pouring water on it. It's like you would think we would have at this point come up with something a little more advanced, a little more thorough, efficient, a little more effective. It's just fucking weird. Like and this happens every year.
Multiple times a year sometimes.
So like the Palisades fire, I don't know if you heard this, and this is what's being reported. I don't know how accurate this is, but this is, I guess, the latest theory on how it started. And this is, news stations are reporting this. Is not like fucking crazy people, but apparently New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, there was a fire in that same spot.
In the Palisades?
In the Palisades, there was a fire that was put out. It was sizable too. Like there's a photo floating around of this homeowner who took a photo from the back of his house of this fire.
Okay.
So it was a pretty good sized fire. They got out there, they put the fire out, and the best explanation they have is that fire was not actually 100% completely out. It was smoldering somewhere. They're thinking it could have even been the roots of some plants or whatever that were smoldering literally below the dirt. And when the winds kicked up, it just reignited that fire that was smoldering there for a week.
I've never heard of anything like that ever happening. Interesting.
Well, I didn't know that it's possible, but apparently it is. Like apparently, like, so I've even and I've heard about this in trees, but I didn't know like the roots can do this. But like I've heard of trees that will burn from within without actually catching on fire.
Yeah, I've seen videos of that.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Like fire is not one of those things that I think that we fully understand yet, but like I think it's a force of nature. So it's not like we 100% know how to utilize it or harness it, or
Well, it's also so dangerous. So
well, and that's the thing is you can't control it. Like you put fuel in front of it and it just burns everything in its path. So it's not like it's 100% controllable and channelable or whatever you're gonna try to do with it. But I don't get it. It's like you would think that there would be some kind of system in place where if you have that much dry brush, near that many homes that I don't
You'd
know.
have
If
figured out a way to kind of avoid a situation like
yeah,
this.
well, okay. So for example, with these fires, right? Well, and it's like I watched helicopters drop water on these fires for days on end, days, and it wasn't just one helicopter. I think at one point there were up to like 8 or 9 of them, maybe 10. It was an insane amount of helicopters just going in circles, making water drops. What I don't understand is if you're, and the wind was forecast from the weekend prior. The wind, like they knew that
It was
these
going to be windy.
crazy winds were incoming. So crazy winds are coming. You already had a fire up in that spot just a few days prior. There's a bunch of dry vegetation up there, and we have the helicopters. Instead of being reactive and trying to put out fires with those helicopters, fly a bunch of fucking helicopters to go wet that area down.
Exactly.
At least, and nobody's
Do
saying you
something
have to,
preventative.
well, and that's the thing is like you don't have to wet down the entire hillside. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do that, but it's like make a couple of water drops just right along where the houses are, so that even if a fire does start in the brush, by the time it gets close to the houses, it's kind of wet, it's damp, it's whatever. It doesn't catch as easily. It gets firefighters a chance to actually put it out before
Exactly.
it spreads. But I mean, now you've got fucking how many people are displaced? How many homes? And it's
Heartbreaking, honestly.
It's beyond heartbreaking. It's fucking unbelievable. Like the fact that we as a as a people as human beings living in 2025 with all our advancements and all our technology and all our understanding of things can still have an entire neighborhood wiped out by a fire when it seems like there obviously everything has a cost, but it seems preventable. It seems like if we stop worrying about the price tag, we could prevent things like this from happening.
Yeah, well, there's certain things that you can do to avoid situations like this.
Well, and
But-
just brush clearance and stuff like that. It's like, or even if you as the government, whether it's the city or the state or whoever's in charge of these brush clearance issues, probably county, but even if you don't want to foot the bill for it, then make it a thing that homeowners need to do their own brush clearance, and just 100 yards past their house has to be free of brush. Just some way of making sure that this doesn't happen again. Because I don't know, like I feel like there's going to be people just leaving California at this point.
Maybe
People
some
who's-
people just don't have a choice.
Well, and
know?
people whose homes burned down where it's like, hey, I can't wait 2 or 3 years for my house to be rebuilt, and in the meantime pay crazy amounts of rent. I feel like these people are just going to be like, hey, you know what? Let's just fucking up and leave.
Yeah.
Grab our insurance check and just go buy a house in Texas or Arizona or Miami or anywhere else. Which is, it's understandable too. It's like you pay through the nose to buy this home in one of the best areas of the city, if not the best. I mean, it's arguable, but
Yeah.
you spend all this money to buy a home there. You spend money, you're paying through the nose for taxes, cost of living, fuel, fucking everything else. And then all of a sudden this fire comes through, your city, county, state governments fail you, your home burns down along with every fucking memory you have in it. So now you're left on the street with nothing but the clothes on your back. I would say, I wouldn't want to be put in that situation,
Yeah.
but if I were, I would literally turn around and just leave. I'd be like, I'm not chancing it again, know?
And also all those people that were building houses
Oh,
out
yeah.
there.
Oh yeah.
All the new construction.
Oh, and there was a ton of it. Like if you drove around there, half the cars that were on the road were like construction vehicles or trucks making deliveries, dump trucks, concrete trucks. Like there was a lot going on out there. And none of these houses were cheap. Let me tell you. If you looked at the average cost, I think the average cost for a home in the Palisades is something like $3.5 or $4 million.
And aren't like the 2.5 mil houses kind of like the older houses
Yeah.
that haven't really
Yeah.
remodeled or
yep.
anything like that, which is still a substantial amount of money for a home.
But still, those were so $2.5 million would have gotten you like a single story, maybe 2,200 square foot house, maybe less than that, maybe 2,000 square foot house. that hasn't been remodeled since like the 90s. And the screwed up part of it is that that's where, you know, the older people were living. Those were the people that bought in that area 60 years ago and are now retired and just living out their days in this home that's the only thing they have.
Right.
And they just lost that too. You know, it's like, but yeah, some of those newer houses out there, $7-8 million easily.
And I'm sure there's houses
when
upwards of like
when you get up the hills,
tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, there were houses. I think there was one that burned down that was estimated to be like 50 or 60 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, some of those houses were huge. And you know, that's the thing is like you're right on you've got an ocean view, you've got, you know, you're in the best part of town, it's safe, it's clean. But the thing is the one thing that could have fucked it all up was all that overgrown brush on that hillside. And the way that fire spread was insane. Like it came down that hill. I think it was like in a couple of hours it started coming down.
It moved pretty fast.
I remember reading something, and I can't remember which news station it was. It was either ABS or CBS. Well, ABC or CBS. They had reported that fire when it first was reported was only like a couple of acres, like 2 acres or 10 acres or something when they first got on the story. And within an hour it had blown up to like 200 acres or something. Within you know what? It might have even been quicker than that. Cuz that didn't even sound right. That's not. But I mean either way though, it blew up. Like it exploded. I mean so much so where you've seen the videos.
Yeah.
People were literally ordered to get out of their cars and
just
run. Literally run.
Cars just left there.
Because the fire was spreading so quick that they actually thought that the amount of traffic was going to end up with people trapped in their cars and burning alive.
Yeah.
I have never heard of a fire spreading that quick.
And a lot of those cars burnt down too, that they just left there.
So the crazy part is I've seen the video where somebody was walking down the street and recording the cars that were left there. And they literally panned the camera over to the other side of the street. So because they had left the cars in the middle of the street, I think it was Cal Fire came through with a bulldozer and basically pushed a path in the middle of them. So cars were either on the left or the right so that fire trucks can get through.
Right.
So cars on one side of the street were completely fine. On the opposite side of the street,
They're all burnt. I saw that video.
I mean, how does that even happen? Like it's literally like it just drew a line right there and said, okay, we're going to burn all this shit and not burn this stuff.
Yeah. Do you know how the Malibu fires started? Like, how did that even happen?
That just spread from the Palisades.
That's because the wind carried it or something.
Well, so the problem was that the way that the hill because of where the hill was and because of like the way the wind was coming in, essentially what was happening is the fires that were further up the hill were basically getting this like little like wind push that was just pushing the embers over the side of the hill and just raining it down on everything below. So that's how like a bunch of, so this is why there were so many houses that caught on fire at the same time. It wasn't like one caught and then it caught the one next to it. It was just embers were blowing everywhere. And I mean, there were embers the size of friggin', bowling balls that were just flying around because of how much wind there was and how much fire there was. And it was just a chain reaction. It was one caught the next on fire, and then that caught 3 more on fire, and all the way down to Malibu into the Topanga Canyon area. So, I mean, it almost made it down to the valley side.
Yeah,
they really had to put everything they had on it to keep it from coming down the hill on the valley side, because I think it actually made it across the ridge.
Didn't it make it into Encino?
Yeah, so basically that was going to be the next thing, and that was a screwed up part, is because Encino is also pretty dense, and it's very similar to how part of the Palisades is, where if one house would have caught there, it would have probably been the same stupid chain reaction. But they had the helicopters, everything was in place at the time. So once it started making its way up the hill and trying to get over to the valley, they were able to hit it immediately, and they still had to fight it. It's still, for a couple of hours, it was pretty hairy, but it almost came down the hill on the valley side. which would have probably been twice as bad as it was.
They put that out in what, 2 days? I think it was 1 day.
The
Encino, the one that was near the valley.
I mean, that part of it, they fought off, and they I think in 2 days it was kind of done for. But the problem is that it was all part of the same fire, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's not like they ever really put it out. They just kind of fought that front of it. But apparently up until now, like I drove through Sepulveda today, and Sepulveda's closed in one direction, and every street coming off of Sepulveda going into Encino up the hill is closed. It's blocked off. There's a police car. There's caution tape. So they're still under an evacuation order. Mm-hmm. And the fucking weird thing is I keep reading that it's still an active fire and it's only at like 20% containment, but you see no smoke in the area.
Interesting.
You don't see anything out there. Like you don't see fire trucks going up and down the street. You don't see smoke. You don't see helicopters. There's nothing.
Well, I think Glendale's in the same situation because I think they had the order to evacuate and then like in the hills.
Uh-huh.
And then that order I think ended either today or it's going to end tomorrow.
But see, that's the thing is like, because over there too, the fire's out. Mm-hmm. At least from the looks of it, but we keep getting told that the fires are still burning. So I don't know if it's one of those things where maybe it's the same thing and they're afraid of it flaring back up, where there's embers on the ground that they're just hosing everything down at this point. But yeah, it's kind of weird because it's like you drive through there and you're like, there's no smoke, there's no signs of fire, but things are still under evacuation, and it's just fucking weird. I don't know. Which also brings me to my next point. If it starts raining up there anytime soon, the next issue is going to be mudslides.
Oh, yeah.
Because now that the vegetation's gone, there's nothing left to hold
all the dirt, the mud.
Nothing left to hold the hillside together.
Yeah. That's also very dangerous.
So that's going to be that's going to be the next challenge. So even after all these fires, people are going to go back to their homes, get what, whoever has a home left, maybe get some of their shit out of there because it's probably smoke damage beyond freaking repair at this point. I don't think anybody's going to be able to live in these houses that are standing where...
Probably not for a while.
Where obviously if you're outside of where it burned, where you're a block away or something, you'll probably be okay. But if your house was like the one standing out of 50 houses around it that burned, there's probably so much smoke damage. Plus, I'm sure utilities are out and stuff like that too. So it's probably going to be at least a few months before you're even able to get in there.
I wonder how long it takes for like cleanup. Like when do you start cleaning up? How long do you have to wait?
I think right now it comes down to once the orders are lifted, once people are allowed to go back into the neighborhoods, but then also insurance.
Yeah.
I don't think you could really do anything until your insurance company has gone through and basically documented what they need to.
That would take months, don't you think?
Well, I think that in a normal situation, it would maybe take a couple of weeks, but I feel like with the amount of houses that burned down in the area, just in terms of Los Angeles in general, because I heard something like 12,000 houses, 14,000,
wow.
Some crazy number. I don't know what 11,000 maybe. So with the total number of houses that burned, I'm sure these insurance companies are scrambling right now, and I'm sure they got their hands full. So who knows? They're probably going to be delayed too. So let's assume a couple of months before insurance even gets in there. And then you got to find somebody who, this is the next challenge. Now you got to find a company that's willing to come out and do the work because everybody's going to be freaking swamped.
Yeah.
Because whether you're going to demolish what's left and build a new house, or you're going to try to do, repairs and smoke remediation and all that stuff, every single freaking contractor in the city, every single smoke and water damage remediation company in the city is going to be freaking up to their eyeballs in work.
Oh yeah, and then just finding enough people to do these jobs.
Not
to have big enough teams to be able to go out there and do the inspections and whatever else they need to do to
just materials is going to become an issue because it's no longer it's not like the regular construction pace where it's like, you might have one house on each block getting a remodel or an addition or something like that. You're building an entire new neighborhood.
Yeah.
So lumber is going to become an issue. Wires are probably going to become an issue. But
I mean, isn't lumber now like really expensive anyway?
Well, it was during COVID, but it came back down. It's
Okay.
I mean, it never went back down to what it was
Yeah.
prior, but it's like it's relatively normal.
And imagine how much more expensive it's going to rebuild these houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus what these people bought them for and
Absolutely.
what they're going to pay now.
Absolutely. Well, and you got to imagine too, like the past few years, what was it in 2022 when houses, I think it was 22, where houses peaked and the prices were just fucking off the charts. How screwed up is it for somebody that bought like a new construction house at that time where they paid top dollar for it? And even just in, interest rate adjustments and all this different stuff that happened, that today that same house is worth, well, not today, let's say a week and a day ago, that same house was maybe worth already 5 or 10% less. So they were already, they had already lost some money on it, but now it's completely gone. So now they have to rebuild it from scratch.
And they can't come back up from that.
I don't know if you ever get your investment back at this point.
I don't know how, I don't want to know how that works. And it's just such a horrible, horrible thing that has happened.
Well,
and I just, pray for those families and hope for recovery. So,
but I did read this thing that the mayor had put out today. It was today or yesterday. So apparently they're going to expedite the rebuilding process of any, as far as LA City goes. I don't know about, Pasadena and all that, but LA City is going to be expediting the rebuilding process. They're going to expedite permit issuance. They're getting rid of some of the regulations. Like, for example, LA has in the Palisades area, there's a coastal commission thing where there's specific codes as far as what the house can look like. And, I think there's some things about the heights and the sizes of the houses, whatever, where they have to go through a special coastal commission that has to approve everything.
Okay.
They're waiving that requirement. So that's out the window. So you can.
Well, I'm sure that helps with, if people want to rebuild their homes like it was before.
So that's what this is for. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I should have specified. This is not for just like anybody that wants to come in and just build. There was a little shack and now they want to build this massive mansion. This is for people that want to rebuild to what they had.
Yeah.
So, your 3,000 square foot house burned down. You could rebuild your 3,000 square foot house. You're going to be exempt from that. You're going to be exempt from the all electric building ordinance that LA City has. So in LA City, any new building is not allowed to have gas. So no gas water heaters, no gas dryers, no gas ovens, no gas anything. So if you're rebuilding as a result of this fire, you're allowed to get around that and you're allowed to have gas back at your house.
That's if you had that before or
in
general?
Well, no. So it's basically because most of these houses, that all electric thing, I think is only about a year and a half, almost 2 years old at this point. So there aren't that many houses that actually have that all electric requirement. There's probably only a handful.
Okay.
Or I mean, in terms of that area. But so what they're doing is if you had basically what you had before, you're allowed to have again.
Okay.
So if you had gas
makes
before,
sense.
you're allowed to have gas now. If your house was, larger than what would be allowed by today's standards, but that's what burned down, so you'd be able to build that same square footage or that same width or the same height or whatever, because LA had like a bunch of different ordinances that came in.
Yeah.
Like the mansionization ordinance where it limited how much you could build. So now anybody that whose house was lost in that fire, they're going to be allowed to build exactly what was there without having to go through all these extra hoops. And they're actually going to expedite plan approvals to be within 30 days of submission. So you submit your plans today.
Yeah.
Within 30 days, you'll have Well, I don't know if it's approvals or actually like a result. So like, because you might submit your plans and you might have issues with it, where you have to address those issues and resubmit.
Does it typically take longer than that though?
Oh, especially in that area, yeah.
Okay.
So even without the coastal commission stuff, like you're still looking at a couple of months of back and forth just to get your plans approved. With the coastal commission stuff, it could take a year or two.
Oh wow.
Sometimes longer. It depends on the size of the house, what all you have going on. If you're, hanging off a hillside and you have all kinds of retaining walls and freaking crazy foundation systems, it could definitely take longer. But they're trying to expedite it so that people can start rebuilding. And I don't know, again, I don't know at what point they're able to get back in there.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know when that process starts. Like, is somebody able to go in there today and say, hey, here are my plans. I want to get a jump on this. Or is this something that has to wait until there's some kind of like an okay given so that people could start all that? So yeah, I don't know.
Guess we'll just have to wait and see. And
yeah,
hopefully these things, are done sooner than later.
Yeah, I don't imagine that many people are gonna sell their property. But I do know that there's gonna definitely be some freaking shady developers that are gonna come in and try to snatch up a bunch of these properties. I just don't think that you're gonna get, because when you buy a house, right, you're buying the house plus you're buying the building plus the land value. And over there, like in the Palisades, a lot of what you're paying for was the land value because of where you are, your proximity to the ocean and all that. I don't think the land value is there anymore.
You don't think so after this, or?
I think, yeah, you're still on the same piece of land, but the neighborhood that made that land valuable doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. But I mean, you can rebuild.
Yeah,
right? And
but
then that land will become valuable again.
Of course.
So it's not like.
But I think that it's almost like, I don't know if you remember this, but after the Northridge earthquake, for like maybe a good 10 years, houses in Northridge were just cheap.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody was afraid to move into that area.
I mean, they're still not as expensive
as the rest
other
of
parts
of course. But so my point is I think that because of this fire, I think that whole Palisades area kind of lost a little bit of its value because now people are kind of worried about, well, shit, if I build here, what's going to stop the next fire from eating my house again?
Yes and no. I also feel like Pacific Palisades has
it has a reputation,
certain reputation, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's a little bit different than other cities, so I don't necessarily think it's going to lose value.
Yeah,
I do think that some people, will be wary of what could happen in the future, but I think overall, I don't think that should be an issue in the long run.
I mean, I guess we'll find out pretty soon here once they start allowing people to go in and start cleaning things up, and you'll start seeing, how many are going to be listed for sale or how many are going to start rebuilding.
Yeah.
But even more than Palisades, I'm kind of like, it's a little crazy to think that all those houses that were on the water in Malibu are somehow going to get rebuilt.
Yeah.
Because it's not, I mean, a lot of those houses were old. It's not an easy undertaking to build right on the water like that. So I can only imagine how much more it's going to cost today to build something like that on the water.
Oh, yeah.
And how many of those people are actually going to make that investment to go and build on the water again?
Thing, yeah. I mean, same thing for the fires in Altadena. So many houses burnt down. So many people lost their homes. And
those were even more screwed up because it's
just so tragic.
Yeah, it tore through the neighborhood. Yes. It wasn't like it's, I don't know exactly where it started, but I mean, it wasn't like the Palisades fire where for a while you're like, oh, it's just the hillside burning, whatever. Like in Altadena, it was almost immediate where it's like this fire started and these houses have burned down.
Yeah.
Like it was almost immediate, So I got to wonder if it started like right in the neighborhood or just like right very close to where the homes were. But
I mean, we drove past it.
We drove past a part of it. I don't know. And I don't know if that was maybe the very beginning of it or not, but that wasn't that far up the hill. It was right there. There's smoke on the freeway. That's how close it was. I don't know. To me, it really freaking pisses me off that nobody has figured out. Like, we can't be, the average person sits there and says, okay, we had a bunch of rain last year. this is all just very fucking common sense. We had a bunch of rain last year. We had a bunch of grass and trees and shrubbery that grew up in the hills. The hills were all green. I mean, you remember last year where we had all the crazy rains? Like everything was green. So clearly there was a lot of growth. And then we had no rain for a year. But somehow it never dawned on anybody that was in charge of all this stuff to say, oh shit, we have a bunch of really dry grass up there. Maybe we should do something for brush clearance or to...
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said earlier,
like,
this has happened not as big, but this is, we have situations like this happen almost every year.
Yeah.
And you would think you'd learn your lesson.
You would think. We had, what was it, 6 years ago? We had that Getty fire that also burned down a bunch of houses that started like right off the 405. Same fucking situation. It started in the brush and then just went into the neighborhoods and ate houses alive back and forth. And it's like, you would have thought we would have learned from that one. Hey, there was a bunch of tall, dry brush. Maybe clear that brush. But then 5 years later, the same thing happens, but this one a lot more devastating.
Yeah, we need to do better. This is unacceptable.
Absolutely. I think, the thing that pisses me off is it's not, I don't think this necessarily is like a lack of knowledge thing. Like we, as a state, as a city, we have the people that know how to take care of this stuff.
Right.
Like we're not surrounded by a bunch of idiots. We have a bunch of scientists that are, especially here in California, we're all about like climate scientists and all that stuff. So it's like, clearly there are people here that know exactly what's going on. But why is it that we're not consulting with these people proactively and saying, hey, maybe we should take care of this shit. What do you suggest? Versus after fucking thousands of people lose their homes, then all of a sudden we're like, oh, hey, maybe we should do this.
That's
like,
what
come
I
on,
can't
really?
wrap my head around. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I have no idea.
It seems, and I don't want to sound like a fucking politician or a failure of leadership. Like, no, this just seems like it was just stupidity. Like it wasn't a failure of leadership. There was, I'm sure, tons of opportunities for tons of people to speak up. Anybody that was in any kind of position of control or influence to say, hey, we should probably look at this. We have a bunch of dry grass all over the freaking hillsides. We're about to have winds with gusts of up to 100 miles an hour.
Crazy.
I mean, that's a fucking hurricane. We're about to have this crazy climate event, wind event, whatever you want to call it. Maybe we should look at, positioning a few vehicles in the place. Maybe we should look at doing some water drops preemptively to wet the hillsides just a tad so that it's not as easy for this shit to catch fire. Nobody did a fucking thing about it. And then this is what we end up with.
Yeah.
Like it genuinely pisses me off because it seems like if money and politics was not an issue, I feel like this would have never been a problem. But somehow money's always an issue. Politics are always an issue. It's always some kind of like, oh, well, we got to do this and we don't have time for that or we don't have the budget for this. But somehow we spent $24 billion last year as a state to combat homelessness.
Yeah.
We have more homeless people today than we had before. Plus, out of that $24 billion, they can't even account for where any of it was spent. You can't even fucking tell me where you spent $24 billion? That is insane.
Yeah.
I guarantee you $24 billion could have avoided these fucking fires.
I'm sure.
They could have probably, for $24 billion, you could have probably hired enough people to hand cut the fucking shrubbery and the grass up there,
Buy a lot of goats.
A lot of fucking goats. Exactly. I mean, places like that, you might as well just have like a little goat farm right in the middle of the hill and just to have them just roam around eating the grass,
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, something. It seems crazy to me that we can't get a grip on stuff, like get a handle on stuff like this when it's not a surprise. That's the thing that I don't get is like they sit there and they act like, well, we didn't expect this. No, you fucking did because it's not a surprise. This happens every year. Every year or two, we get a giant fire like this. Luckily, in the past, it hasn't, wiped out entire neighborhoods and burned this many homes. But this time, unfortunately, it did. And what's going to happen the next time? Where's the next one going to be? You know what I mean? And that's the thing that pisses me off is they act surprised about it. Like, you know about this. You've had so many years of this happening where you could have kind of worked out a preventative measure. You could have worked out better preparation. You could have, I mean, shit, it's like with all the wildfires in California, maybe we need to invest in more helicopters, more water dropping
Something.
helicopters, you know, have a whole fucking fleet of them. That way, if there is a fire, instead of having 3 or 4, you could have 20 on top of them, you know, before the end of the day, and that fire's out. I don't know. It just screwed up. All in all, it's overall, it's just a screwed up situation. I genuinely, to whoever might know somebody or has lost their homes or whatever, or lost anything in that fire, in any fire for that matter, I'm sorry, because I feel like this is something that really was probably preventable if the people in charge were just better prepared. Yeah.
It's terrible. It's a tragic situation, and prayers to everyone that's dealing with this and has dealt with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't imagine it. It's like, you see some of these videos where people are just breaking down crying because as they're talking to the reporter, they remember something else that
it's heartbreaking.
Well, absolutely. You see these people literally like they're talking to a reporter who's interviewing them, and they break down in the middle of it because they remember that their fucking baby pictures were in the house that they can't replace, or their wedding album was in the house that they can't replace, or family heirlooms that were in the house.
All the pets.
I'm sure there was a lot.
My goodness.
Yeah. The sad part is, the really sad part, I think the latest number was 24 people passed away in this fire. I don't know what's going to happen when they actually start going from building to building, because I also feel like there was probably a lot of elderly people who didn't have anybody else left, who lived alone at home, who weren't able to get out in time, and who nobody has reported as missing. So there's probably a few people who have passed away in this fire. I don't imagine it's that many, but there's probably a couple dozen more that have passed away in this fire that nobody knows about.
That's so sad.
It's fucking horrifying. And that's got to be the worst fucking way to go in a fire. That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't even want,
I couldn't think about it. I really couldn't. Like that and drowning have to be the 2 worst ways to go. There can't be anything worse. Anyway, maybe some happy thoughts now.
Happy thoughts. Think happy thoughts.
Yeah. It's been a fucking shitty start to the year, huh?
Yeah. Can we get a refund?
Yeah, maybe get a rain check and just redo like a mulligan in golf. Because that was a fucking shitty start to the year.
Very.
I mean, we'll see what happens with the rest of it. Maybe we're just getting the bad luck out of the way early or something. I don't know.
I hope so, because this is not a good start.
Knows? Yeah, who knows?
All right, till next time.
Till next time, I guess. You're calling this one?
I'm calling
You're calling it. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and catch you on the next one.